Good day or night to you, welcome to the Gaming Tome. So I tried to simulate water on miniature terrain using glue a while back. I was trying to create deep, transparent water effects using cheap, clear PVA glue. The results of my previous attempt looked promising. I had to explore it further, so I made another round of experimental terrain pieces. But this time I crossed the line. The people in the comments, they tried to warn me. They said things like, clear PVA glue shrinks too much and try clear resin. But I didn't listen. I went too far. I tried to play God and bend the PVA glue to my will. I had great plans, great ideas, but like the honey badger, the PVA glue did not care. The PVA did not give a shit. I was due for a reckoning, and my hubris was rewarded with a mess. Actually, multiple messes. This is the story of my second attempt at creating water effects using clear PVA glue. It did not go well. This project was slow and had so many problems that I just stopped recording the crafting process. This might be a vlog? A vlog? That sounds like a creature name for Dungeons & Dragons.
Help us, adventurer. Go to the cave and defeat the vlog before it comes back to eat our children.
This video is me trying to bring order to a project that was slow, messy, and changed directions multiple times. This is a cautionary tale. Where and how these pieces went wrong is probably where one can find the most value from this project. Let's get into this jumbled mess. So to recap my previous video on this topic, I built these pool and puddle terrain pieces and then poured clear PVA glue into the center to simulate the water effects. They have raised embankments to contain the glue. They came out okay. They warped a little bit, which is not ideal, but I applied multiple coats and that seems to have worked at adding depth. That brings me to the main goal of this second attempt, to see if I can make the clear PVA water effects deeper and how deep. One problem with these pool terrain pieces is that it is difficult to tell how thick the glue actually is. I could have sawed them in half to look at the cross section, but I actually used these pieces, so I was not ready to destroy them. I decided to make mini ocean tiles. They would be 4-inch by 2-inch rectangles of paperboard painted and then coated with glue on top. There would be no embankments. That would make it easy to gauge how thick the PVA was. I used 3mm paperboard or chipboard for the tiles, mainly because I have a ton of it. I then painted the tiles blue with patches of aqua all over. As for applying the glue to the tiles, I had a few ideas for how to approach this and refined or shifted my process as I went. The first idea was to pour the glue onto the tiles and spread it to the edges with a brush. I would then let it cure and then repeat the process until the tile eventually reached an appropriate thickness. Ideally, a layer would be thick, but just enough so that it would not overflow the edges. Easier said than done. I hoped that the cohesion of the glue would keep it from leaking, but it leaked a few times anyway. The most difficult leaks were from the early layers on a tile where the porous paper would absorb some of the glue and warp, causing glue to flow to the sides and pour off of the paperboard. Once the tile had a couple of layers, though, the paperboard became sufficiently insulated so this type of warping stopped being an issue. These layers of glue do not cure quickly and shrink down to being quite thin. As you would expect, this method would take a while, so in the meantime, I decided to try out some other ideas. The second idea I had was to create a mold around the tile and then pour in 1 or 2 deep layers of glue. To do this, I had to build a mold. I learned early on that this was going to be a messy project, so I crafted some easy to clean trays from paperboard and packing tape. The clear PVA peels off of packing tape once it has fully cured. This property gave me the idea to craft a reusable mold for my paperboard offcuts. I taped up some strips, stood them up around a tile, placed some heavy objects to hold them in place, poured in the glue, and left. I hoped that because the glue is thicker, the mold had a chance of containing the glue, but no. Instead, it just drained out of the corners. This video clip is actually from my second attempt at this mold. Oh well, it was worth a shot. This time I decided to try a simpler approach at creating a mold. I took some packing tape, I wrapped it around the tile, made sure it was nice and tight, and then I sliced the upper corners, pinched them together to make the corners sharper. I poured a much thicker layer into this tape mold and it held. This was a minor victory. I would just need to wait for it to cure, and then surely I would have thicker water effects. It took a long time to cure. Longer than the layered approach, since this layer of glue was at least 3 times deeper. Just the fact that the tape mold held warranted more tests. I will get back to this, but first let me shift to another fact that I tried. One thing that I neglected to try in my previous attempt at clear PVA water effects was to add ripples to the surface. I turned the failed first mold tiles into layered tiles, so at this point I had extras. I used a few of them to play around with creating waves. Once the tiles had a couple of layers, I added a new layer of glue and tried to shape ripples into the surface with a brush. The glue was too fluid and the waves just flattened out. I waited until the glue cured more and tried again. Same thing happened. I waited even more, and then this time the glue had cured too much, so I couldn't shape it. The tile here is the result. It is not pretty. The shrinking of the glue actually did help dull and kind of smooth out and hide a lot of the scuff marks from me trying to shove the glue into waves. I thought maybe it would work on a deeper layer of glue. Here's where we get back to the taped mold tiles. I actually made 2 of them this round. One of the taped tiles started to separate from the corner, causing this air bubble to appear. I knew that trying to add ripples could ruin the piece, so I decided to try shaping the waves of this one as it was already somewhat damaged. The results were pretty much the same as the other tile I tried to add waves to. Ugly. I decided not to proceed with this tile and removed the tape once it had completely cured. The result was not ideal, but worth trying again in the next round. The glue had shrunk down into a concave bowl shape, with it thinly clinging to the tape walls and then thickening towards the base. The shrinking caused the flexible tape walls to actually be pulled inward as it cured. This resulted in a crude, undesirable bevel. This specific tile was not much thicker than some of the layered glue tiles, but it could go thicker. These water effects were not looking too good, so I took time to try out a popular and, more importantly, reliable way of creating ripples on a water effect. I glued some toilet paper to these tiles and brushed it around a little. The ripples looked harsh in my eyes, so I decided to try something out. On one tile, I put on a layer of clear PVA glue, and on the other tile, I put a thin layer of gloss varnish. And here's the comparison. I actually prefer the clear PVA glue. What it ended up doing was smoothing out the waves, smoothing out that harsh kind of crinkled paper sort of shape that appeared on these tiles, probably from me not being that experienced in applying this technique. So I liked the clear PVA glue on these, but do not get your hopes up. I tried it on larger tiles and it warped so much. And I had not even applied enough to smooth out the waves. And on one of these tiles, it split down the edge. So clear PVA glue on larger water effects is not looking good, which really should not be that much of a surprise because, you know, how much it shrinks. Clear PVA glue is cheap, but it's not meant for this stuff. I think at this point, we're getting beyond the limits of what it can do. On the layered tile front, things got weird. A viewer on my previous water effect video suggested that I coat the back of the bases with glue to counter the warping. I did that on these tiles, but they still warped. The glue on the back of the tiles probably helped, but I think the many layers of glue on top just overpowered the layer of glue on the back, causing it to curl upward. The other tile did not warp. Well, not in the same way. The glue on the other tile actually separated from the paperboard and shriveled up. Even worse, it continued to shrivel up in the weeks that followed. At the time, I thought this was an anomaly, but little did I know there were more problems on the horizon. By this point, I had 2 layered tiles left. I continued the process of applying layers of glue until this happened. The glue started to separate from these tiles here, and it warped them so very much. Look at that. That spelled the end of the layered approach. It's not gonna work. I had 4 tiles walled in with tape in this round. For one of the tiles, the force of the amount of glue in the mold pushed the tape to detach, causing it to leak all over. That one was a failure. Look at this. This is glue. It's formed a thin, like, plastic layer. It's like sort of like clear vinyl or something. Two of the tiles had their glue detach partially from the paperboard. One of these actually came out the thickness I was looking to achieve. It is a shame that the shriveling ruined it. The last tile is a fun one. I decided to mix green paint into the glue like I did for the slime pool in my previous video on PVA water effects. It cured into a thick translucent green, but this was ultimately another fail. I applied 2 coats to this taped-in tile, and the second layer detached the glue from the paperboard, and that ended this project. The problems had been mounting, and enough was enough. The goal of the project was to see how thick I could make these, so how did I fare? The layered approach got to about 1 millimeter thick, with that piece that fully detached from the paperboard achieving about 2 millimeters thick, but that's because it shrank in all dimensions rather than just up and down. Yes, it even shrank in the 4th dimension. The taped-in molds technically reached 6 millimeters, but without that bowl shape on the edges, it's more like 2 or 3 millimeters, which is still considerable. Okay, what did I learn? That clear PVA water effects work? That clear PVA water effects are possible? that clear PVA water effects are possible in very limited applications. It seems to work in the small scale, but it is not meant for this. The wider the surface becomes, the more likely it will warp the base, and the thicker the glue gets, the more likely that shrinking will detach the glue from the base. The glue is also washable, which means that it reactivates with water. Most of us are not planning on getting our miniature terrain wet, but if your hands are not completely dry and you are handling this sort of stuff unvarnished, then you may pull back your hand to find it a little sticky. Yeah. Do not get me started on the curing time. A single layer on these tiles took like somewhere from 3 days to 2 weeks to cure to the point of handling. So what am I left with? A bunch of transparent bits and warped tiles to throw away? Or maybe these wavy bent sheets of PVA are weird. Maybe one of them could be used to represent an interdimensional gateway, a portal to another world. I started by deconstructing one of the thickest tiles. Some of the paper stuck to the glue, so I ended up scrubbing it off with water and an old scrap of sandpaper. This is aggressive, and I did not want to get the glue wet, but I want results fast, and this will get the job done. Next, I cut a base from a piece of scrap paperboard and gave the edges a bevel cut. I coated the base in glue and started carving some rocks. The warped shape of the PVA sheet would be fitting for a chaotic hell portal, so that is what I will make. These rocks are going to be jagged spikes protruding from the ground. In front and behind the portal will be cracked stone with lava between the chunks. These torn bits from a thin sheet of cork are just right for creating this effect. I finished modeling the base by nestling a few pebbles in the empty spaces. The base is going to take a while to dry. Now is a good time to color this abomination. I started with a coat of orange and then followed with some red. I had just organized my craft supplies and rediscovered this bottle of acrylic matte medium. Apparently, this increases the transparency of paint. This would have been helpful to know about a month ago when I was tinting transparent models and terrain features. I mixed some of this with the red paint for the final layer. This mixture brushes on way better than paint thinned with just water. Once that dried, I gave the piece 2 coats of gloss varnish. This thing kind of looks like a fruit roll-up. Now back to the base. This piece has some foam components, so I am priming it with a mix of paint and PVA glue. Not the clear stuff. This time it is plain old white glue. After that dried, I coated the whole thing with a very dark brown. A base coat of white goes in the cracks to prepare for the lava colors that will come later. I overbrushed a mix of brown and maroon over the surface, then dry brushed a charcoal gray, followed with a dry brushing of light gray, and then I applied a dark wash to everything except the white cracks in the ground. I started the lava coloration with watered down red paint. Thinning the paint with water caused it to cling to the edges of the cracks. I am aiming for a gradient from molten yellow at the center to a warm red at the edges. This adhesion helped a little bit with the warmer colors. One final dry brush of charcoal gray will complete the volcanic rock, and the lava cracks were finished after a few layers of orange and then yellow paint. Finally, it is time to glue the portal to the base. There. Done. This trip to DIY hell yielded a piece of miniature terrain, an infernal gateway. Well, I guess something good did finally come from this. There you have it. Portal terrain. That was the topic of the video, right? These clear PVA water effects tests were mostly a failure. I don't plan on delving deeper into this for a while. My curiosity has been satisfied, which is a shame because I bought this. Thank you to everyone who commented on my last video on this topic. Your feedback has nudged me to finally get around to trying a few things that I have been meaning to for a while, and I plan on doing some more model water effect videos in the future, but next time I will do it right. What a concept. Doing things right. If you enjoyed my tale of woe, or even better, learned something, leave a like. If you did not, then tell me why. If you want to see more content, then evacuate the premises before that interdimensional portal to DIY hell starts issuing forth a torrent of glue, and press that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep making and keep playing. Have a good one. The hell am I supposed to do with this? Make slime?